So I'd love for both of you to give some examples of community programs you've run that you're particularly proud of. Tiffany, if it works for you, we can get started with you.
Sure. I would say, the programs that I ran have spanned from very like niche programs to wider programs. And so I would say a couple ones that I'm particularly proud of. Number one is the Salesforce MVP program. This was like a very high visible program to recognize the top echelon of users, super users, product experts within the Trailblazer community. And with that, we provided them access to special features, to product managers, special events and activations at our conferences. And they were really the people who were spearheading, helping the community by answering questions in the forum, by creating MVP led events. And so that one was something that we were very proud of. It was a community nominations and renewal cycle. It was very community led and community generated. And then the other one that I'm particularly proud of is our also at Salesforce is our user group program. So we had about 1,300 user groups, regional user groups, all led by community members across the world, hosting over 3,000 meetings a month. It was a very good way of kind of bringing community together, sharing content, sharing knowledge. We would have Salesforce people, come and attend these meetings as well. And it just really kind of cultivated that additional adoption of the product, learning new features together, helping one another, and bringing community together.
Amazing. User groups are a topic I feel like we talk about a lot. Can you give us a little bit more information? How did you facilitate a lot of those kind of like shared learnings amongst customers, in addition to like facilitating some of that from Salesforce staff members?
I feel like we could do an entire session on the ins and outs of
User
user
groups.
groups, but as a user group leader, we gave them access to a bunch of different resources. So they had a user group leader portal where they could essentially log in. We had crowdsourced content library that both Salesforce employees would add to for any kind of like new talks or things that they did, as well as community generated ones. And so we had a whole content library. We also had a speaker directory where people could sign up and like say like, oh, I'm an expert at XYZ product or XYZ feature. I'm willing to come and speak at events in person in this area, or happy to do virtual. Kind of like each person had their own profile. And so user group leaders could go in and find someone who matched what they're looking for. And then there was a button to reach out to them if they wanted to correspond. And then in that portal, we also had a bunch of additional resources for them. We did, reimbursements for meeting expenses. They could order swag. There's, a bunch of different things that they could do in there.
Amazing. Awesome. And Lana, I'll hand it over to you. Any particular community program that you're proud of?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm a solo community manager, so everything is grassroots for me. So one of the things that I'm most proud of is the Learners Lounge. Pre-COVID, we had conferences and things like that. So I had a Learners Lounge where we had mentor sessions for our customers, and we had a learning bar where like one of the things that I'm proud of is that I was able to do a lot of get a lot of internal partners and have about 100 volunteers to actually man the tables and have like a different schedule, and they self-organize. So the customers, they really appreciated just having that access to SMEs and things like that. So I thought that was really proud. I was really proud of that. And then of course COVID hit, and then no more conferences. So I was able to pivot and adjust to having table talks. And so table talks are, oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Table talks are virtual Zoom sessions where customers have access to like the product team, because they no longer come to conferences and things like that, so they have access. They can hear directly from product leaders and have collaborative and interactive conversations.
And Lena, I think when we were preparing, we were talking a little bit about like the shift from in-person conferences and meetings into like how to translate that virtually and make sure that your members, your audience are getting kind of the same benefits from it. Can you talk to us about the process, especially being forced by COVID, and making that transformation from like in-person events to virtual events?
Yes. So the thing is, I waited to see if we were going to have a virtual conference because a lot of people were moving to virtual conferences. And
Mhm.
so the thing is, like, at conferences, they have breakout sessions with product teams and things like that. So I just translated to a Zoom session.
Format.
And
Mhm.
it was just like setting up a meeting. And I just put it out there. I just put the registration link and crossed my fingers to see who would sign up. And then sure enough, because our first table talk was about, analytics and metrics. And of course, like with COVID, when things were just everything was shut down, people were trying to figure out what to do. And so I just wanted to get customers in front of the people that could help them, that could make their everyday lives better and things like that. So
Yeah.
it was just it was very well received. And we scaled from one table talk to four. So initially I was like just manually sending out the registration links. But when you go to four, you want to make sure you send out the right link. So fortunately, I was able to get a lot of internal stakeholders to help.
That is great. And how often were you guys running the table talks?
Right now, I run the table talks every month, so I have about 3 or 4 a
Monthly.
month. Yeah, so we've been running them since 2020.
Amazing. Awesome. And for both of you, how do you decide when the right time is to introduce a new community program? And what business or community needs or are they meant to solve? Is there sort of like an inflection point that happens? Do you get a lot of input from your members that they're looking for a particular topic? How does that kind of work in both of your instances? Whoever wants to go first.
I guess I'll go. um, I think that there's a couple factors that go into play when determining when to start or launch a new community program. The first is, as a community manager, I believe that you are always the advocate for them internally. And you should always be looking out for their best interests, and you're there to serve the community. So at Asana, we do an annual survey to our Asana ambassadors that get input into why they joined the program, what resources they've used, what types of events or webinars that we've hosted that they've attended, and really what they're looking for as they're furthering their engagement and involvement within the community. From that, we can deduce whether or not we want to introduce new programs. So for example, one of the things that they asked for this last year was more ways to meet other people who are using Asana in similar ways. And so we introduced like an ambassador led virtual event program where people could come together for casual roundtables, networking talks, and then some people are brave enough to do presentations and things like that virtually as well, for specific roles, whether they're in marketing, operations, IT, what have you, and also similar industries. And that is the program in itself that we run now on a regular basis. People can sign up to lead events, and the events are available for all community members who want to attend, for those who are interested. So one thing is, the community and what they're looking for and what they're asking for, and building off of that. But of course, you also have an organization with business needs and goals to meet. And so as you're working with leadership, as you're looking at what the company's priorities are, thinking about what types of programming you can introduce to help support those goals and continue to show kind of like the impact and the value that community is bringing to the business. And so, for example, another example for that is right now, there is, we're really looking for user generated content, use cases, customer stories, things like that. And so we introduced kind of a community contributor program where people can actually contribute their own stories and use cases of how they're using Asana, with kind of a community lens of like, yeah, like this is, how I've been using it at my company. And giving them the ability to share it in the channels that they participate in. And so that way it cultivates conversations from other community members. If they're looking for, ways to kind of share it out across their professional networks, we also help them with LinkedIn and doing reshares and doing cross promotion. And so that way, Asana, our leadership team that's looking for user generated content, we have that available in the customer stories. But at the same time, it's community generated. So we're, fulfilling our goals as well.
And Tiffany, I would imagine at an organization like Asana, community is probably used within the business for a bunch of different inputs. So you talked a little bit about customer stories. That probably satisfies the marketing need. I would imagine product probably uses the community to get kind of like user feedback. How do you balance the needs and priorities across like a variety of different internal functions who are looking to get as much as they can out of the community as a conduit to their users?
Yeah, I was very lucky to what's the word, like adopt the community. So I wasn't the original founder for it, but the my predecessor, Josh Circle, did an amazing job of really establishing community as that center of excellence across the organization. To your point, we are spread. It is a success problem where we work with so many cross-functional stakeholders. Product is definitely one of them. We are very involved with the product team. Obviously, in our forum, we have a product ideas section where community members submit product ideas. Our product team is very much involved in that. And then anytime we have a product announcement, the product team also works on it, making the post in the forum, following up with the community members who requested it, things like that. We're also very involved with the support for like case deflection and making sure we have the proper resources in the forum. We're involved with, yeah. So I can definitely dive into that. But to answer your question, the prioritization is very something that we have taken a very long time to master, and it still becomes a little trepidatious at times. We have an internal intake form. It's an Asana form that's available for all of the Asana employees whenever they need to reach out to us for something, whether it's a report for data, whether it's like, hey, we're doing an event. Can you put a list together of the ambassadors that live within X mile radius of this city? Or, hey, we have a new product coming out. Can you help us with the announcement? Or, hey, we have a campaign coming up. Can you help with promo? So we have the intake form, and we essentially have AI work on properly triaging to the person on my team who would do that. And then we also have a prioritization matrix in terms of like, hey, this is super timely and it needs to be done because it's based off of a specific date, in which case we'll kind of escalate it, versus, hey, this is an idea or an evergreen thing, and then we'll deprioritize it. And then recently, we've really learned to just kind of start saying no to things that don't properly align with our community goals or the organizational goals. And that's been very hard because we've always been yes people, and we always want to we're excited that people want to participate and use the community and engage in the community. But saying no with the reason of like, hey, we're strapped on time and this doesn't align to the priorities. So we'll have to backlog it or deprioritize. And then my last point is also empowering and enabling internal people to participate directly within the community. So if they're looking for someone, we have engagement best practices on how they can talk to people in the community, what they should and shouldn't do. And, once they kind of have that, they also have the freedom to go and interact directly with the community members, which takes that off of our plates.
Yeah, unblocks the community team. I would imagine that that's something that we hear about a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then Lana, I'd love for you to go. We got some good questions coming in the chat that I will post afterwards. But tell us a little bit about some of the kind of how you choose to introduce a new community program.
For me, I usually, of course, the community to getting their input, because Zuora is not a one size fits all sort of product. So sometimes they want to hear from product leaders. Sometimes they want to hear how other people are using Zuora. So I remember one time I asked the community, it's like, if I had a magic wand and I could give you anything that you wanted, what would it be? And they said, we want to talk to product leaders. So that was easy. And so the thing is, what I do is I look for internal signals. Like sometimes you always want to have a seat at the table. That they always say community should have a seat at the table, but sometimes that doesn't happen. And so what you should do is, or what I do is, I go to the all hands, try to read between the lines, because most community managers were really good at reading between the lines of what the actual need is or what the want is. And so I also read, because with teams being so remote, people share their their weekly updates and things like that. So make sure you read things and see what their needs are, what the gaps are, and also to identify what needs that need to be fulfilled, whether it's, product wanting to have more feedback. And that's one way the table talks satisfy that, because it's a bi-directional communication. Or you also want to reduce like duplicative efforts. Like if, say, one team is giving the same demo to different people at the same time, you just have I have a table talk, and then the demo is, the recording is always a gift that keeps on giving. So that's the beauty of recordings. And also, if there's any inefficient processes for like the one-to-many type of communications, but because the community, you post something and then everybody sees. Because sometimes when you ask the community members, of course, like, the lurkers are there, they're too shy to say anything. So sometimes it's like you can reach them by just seeing what they might look for. And then usually your most loyal community members are the ones that are the lurkers, and they send you a private message saying, I was really looking for that. And you're just like, it makes you feel really nice that, you capture, because I'm a wallflower. So I have, my heart goes out to the wallflowers and lurkers. So it just like makes me feel like warm and fuzzy when someone that isn't the loudest appreciates what you do.
Yeah, it's clear there are so many different ways that people plan to communicate and engage. And that made me think there was a question that came through about sort of formats for community programming. When a topic comes up or a request comes in, how do you guys kind of determine what the right format for that within your community is? We've got things like roundtables where it encourages people to kind of foster those conversations, connect more intimately, a webinar like today where people are connecting in the chat. What criteria do you guys kind of look at when a topic comes up to determine how it's going to be communicated the best within your community?
For me, it's pretty much virtual, because there are some in-person events and things like that, but with COVID, like a lot of the travel budgets have been slashed, so not everybody can make it. So when we have a virtual event, since we're a global company, if I have something in the morning U.S. time, then those in APAC can attend. So pretty much for the programs that I run is usually virtual. Sometimes I do in-person user groups, and that's usually at our headquarters and things like that.
Great.
I think the format really also depends on what the end goal or the intention is for. So, for example, I would say if it's something that's like educational in nature, whether or not you're sharing an update on the product or want to share, like a deep dive on a feature, those things tend to be a little bit more larger format and kind of like a webinar-esque where it's like someone is talking or sharing, the information. But and that's very important. But then also maybe you follow that up with like an ask me anything with the product manager who built it or the person who's leading that charge, and that adds a little bit more collaboration in it, but also helps answer community questions that might arise from that webinar format that it's hard because if there's 5,000 people in the webinar, you can't answer all the questions. And so that's when, you could have a little bit more intimate of a session and let, your top super users ask questions directly to the person. And then taking that one step further is kind of the adoption, making it a little bit more tangible. And that's where like the roundtable conversations can come in, where you can actually do some brainstorming. You can hear how other people are taking away that information. And so I think depending on what the topic is, it you can go in a multitude of ways. I do also think that leaning into virtual is we're in a virtual world right now. Getting people together in person is fairly difficult. So save those moments for, I would say, like times where it's important to have them in person. So whether it's like tag teaming into your in-person conference or finding key areas where there's high community engagement, or maybe there's something that's regional that's happening that you want to bring people together to talk about. I think those are opportunities for in-person, but in general, like virtual is much easier.
Yeah. You sort of started to answer this question. We got one in the chat. Charlie came through with wanting to hear about how we're moving back to in-person events after post-COVID. And I feel like a lot of communities are trying to kind of find the footing. Are big annual conferences the way to go, or are some of these smaller sort of user groups and events a way to kind of like ease back into things? And I think the need and the requirement of your members has a lot to do with it, but curious to hear either of your experiences. And Lena, you touched on user groups a little bit.
Yeah, because I know during COVID we had a doc virtual event, and people were different. Countries were opening up at different times. So during when we were all locked down, it was really beneficial to have a virtual thing. But of course, I'm not in the Germany, but we had a CSC or CSM who was out there, so I was able to partner with him. So when they did decide to transition to in person, it was sort of like it was sad to see them go, but it makes sense that they wanted to meet with each other because it's, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and things like that. So that was one of the things. So it's just sort of like, having a child go off to college or something, seeing them go off to kindergarten. You're sad to see them go, but it's like, it's better for them to meet in person.
It's the right time.
Nothing beats in person
Yeah.
for a community. So.
Awesome. So next question here, how do you both determine when a topic or a community program should be an evergreen topic that you kind of repeat and refresh, or something that's a bit more time bound?
I can go. Usually, I just assume everything is time bound because you never know when things change, when goals change, or customer needs change. But mostly, I just try to think of myself as a TV show producer. I try to think of a series. If a show doesn't hit, then it's like, well, your favorite TV shows go off the air because not enough eyeballs are there. And it's like, it's okay, because it's okay to fail, because success is just getting up one more time than you fail. And so it's just like, at least and then maybe you need to adjust that, tweak it a little bit, or, tweak the cast or something like that. But then if something's really hitting, then at least for the next season, then you just tweak it up a little bit, maybe bring in new guests or internal teams or things like that. So just try to make it fun. Also for the customers as well.
I love that TV producer analogy. I've never heard that before. I'm probably gonna take that and use it from now on too. I also mirror Lana's sentiments. I think it also depends on, maybe there's a trial period. Maybe you're running something for a little bit of time. And at the beginning, when you're launching the program, I think it's always really important to also have success metrics on like, what does it mean for this program to be successful? And then after a certain amount of time that you've predetermined, whether it's, a quarter or 6 months or a year, you look at the metrics and see like, is this performing? Is this creating the impact that we are expecting it to? And then that's the point where you need to either pivot, evolve the program, or work on sunsetting it. I also think like looking at, what the business goals are and what the community goals are. And if this program that you're running isn't really aligned with those, then maybe it's time to either focus on, downsizing that program, maybe just keeping the lights on to a minimum capacity, or shutting it down. I don't think, obviously, I think when you think about things like a user group program or like a super user MVP type program, you create those with the intention of it being evergreen. But at the same time, business needs are always changing. Like, we're in such a weird world where we have no idea what the next year will look like. And so even the word evergreen for me doesn't mean that it will be around forever. It just means that like we have to check in every now and then and see how it's performing, and make our decisions based off of that.
Yeah. And those decisions have to be difficult, right? If a program probably isn't performing really well, but you have a gut instinct that maybe it's not, like you had mentioned, not the right team in place, or the topic isn't correct, how do you determine when to pivot and try something different, and when to sort of cut your losses and move on? Are there any, like, is it partially gut instinct? Is it all metrics driven? Is it a little bit of both?
I think it has to be a little bit of both. I think the metrics are very important and is a good indicator of whether or not you should evolve or deprecate or keep the program. But also, maybe you need to change the success metrics. Maybe you're not actually measuring the right thing. So taking a look at that. And then I also think, at least for the community programs that I've worked on, they've always been cross-functional to an extent too. And so getting your stakeholder input on whether or not they think it's being valuable and to what, capacity they're participating or spending their bandwidth in the program. Are they finding it helpful? And then of course, like getting insight from the community members is also very important. Like, do they find value? Are they enjoying being or participating in the program, or is it more passive that, yeah, like I'm in this WhatsApp group, I don't really look at it much, or I'm just in it every now and then. It's not They're not participating. Maybe that's an indicator too. And to the gut feeling, I feel like we as community managers have a really good lens into bringing together, company wide, community internal, stakeholder input and community input. And like, your community, who's in the community, what they're looking for, what they value. And so I do think gut feeling is very important in that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for
Lana,
me,
you
it's
had
mostly,
mentioned,
oh, sorry. For me, it's
oh,
mostly been a timing issue because sometimes, like what Tiffany was saying, like our gut feeling, we know that they need this and we know that they're asking for this, but sometimes it's just like the stars just aren't aligned right at that moment. And so usually I try to like just toss seeds to get just plant a seed in people's heads. So then like maybe the next fiscal year, they'll be like, oh, wait, I remember this. And it's just like, oh, I have a deck for that. So
Mhm.
it's a good feeling when you be like, oh, I am, prescient. I knew you were going to bring this up. Because it's like, we're as community managers, a lot of us, we're fortune tellers. We can tell when something's needed or when it's going to come.
and I was going to say, Lena, you mentioned that people reach out to you kind of directly to give feedback. Do you have any mechanisms for getting feedback on programs, or is it typically people kind of like posting within threads in the community, or do you guys deploy any kind of like surveys or pulse checks?
Usually, because after every table talk, I have my email address. I give the recap with the presentation and video. So they usually like email me. And so, because the thing is that one thing I feel that the community members have with me is like they have trust because I'm very methodical. It's like they know that I will deliver. And if I don't deliver, I'm honest and transparent about that. And so at least they know that I have an open door policy to any type of feedback, good, bad, or ugly. And then like fortunately, I'm very good to have very kind and helpful community members. So it's just like that type of communication is very helpful for me, and I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. One of the topics that we talk a lot about with our customers is community growth and scaling communities. And with both of you, I'd love to know a little bit more about how you're designing systems or governance models that, as your community grows, your programming grows, how are you kind of organizing events with utilizing kind of members to have a little bit more control over those user groups, different activities like that, without losing kind of like the quality or organization that you guys have amongst your community as community managers?
Lana, you can go first.
Oh, sure. So the thing is, like, since I'm a team of one, it's just like right now we don't have that in place. But if I were to have it, because I was pre-COVID, I was getting that ready because I was launching a community chapters program, and we had 10 to 12 members from around the globe like hosting their own events, even though I had like zero budget. But like, that's the need that they really wanted to connect with other members. And so I did I did a vetting process. I wanted to make sure that the person who's representing, the community members in their area and also the community as a brand, that they are good people. So I checked with the, CSM team to see are they reputable? Would they be good advocates? And also like, what I had like just a very quick training process to be like, this is what you do to like welcome people and, just the very common sense type of things. But at least we don't sacrifice quality and things like that. And also we want to make things consistent. So if somebody goes to another group, they know what to expect. But each person can add their own flavor. So, yeah.
My I started working in community kind of on the operational side, so really working on like the tech stack and the processes, and creating points of automation to set up for scale. I would say as you're working on growing and scaling a program, there are, those kind of like repetitive, look for things that you can automate, that make things a lot easier. So like those repetitive things, with the advent of AI, you can do a lot of things in addition to that much faster. So for example, let's say you have a form, like an application form for someone to become a user group leader. Rather than doing a manual review, maybe you set up some automation on based off of various factors like, previous community participation, where they're located, what their product usage is, how long they've been in the community. Maybe you have an automation set up to auto accept or reject applicants, with another one for like, hey, this one actually needs a manual review. That way, instead of going through all the applications, you're maybe only spot checking them occasionally or looking at the ones that it's flagged for a manual review. And then, so like, look for automation points. I think a lot of people tend to jump into automating everything at the get-go. I do think that's not the right process. I have a saying that said that's called, well, that is wait, don't automate. And I think it's really good to do it for a little while manually so you see where, things could get stuck or where there are various exception cases that maybe automation isn't the best place. Also, as a community manager, I think it's important to still maintain those one-on-one relationships. And so making sure you're still on the ground, talking with community members and everything like that. But finding the opportunities where you can be a little bit more hands off or have opportunities for, automating processes. So I think that's one thing. The second thing for me, and this is kind of like a management tactic as well, is just like learning when to kind of self-enable and let them do it themselves. So kind of to my point that I brought up earlier in terms of empowering our employees to engage directly in the community, if we don't have bandwidth to kind of be that liaison, I think similarly, you can empower your community members to do things as well. So, for our user group program, we onboard them onto an event management platform that we use that they can actually they create their event landing pages, they create registrations, they can track everything, and they can actually host the meeting there as well. So we don't actually have to be hands-on at all. What we do is we help with like promotion of the event if they need troubleshooting help, but really that's our way of kind of being a little hands-off while still having availability for them to reach out to us if they need help at any time. And then of course us doing proactive check-ins and touching base every now and then to make sure they're okay. So I do think there are opportunities that you can be a little bit more hands-off from the automation standpoint, as well as just empowering your users and your members as well.
I think that's a great balance, because right now, especially with all of the innovations in AI, I think the conversations we're hearing, the discourse within the community space is a lot of hesitancy around taking kind of the human element and the human connection out of community, but ways to kind of automate your own workload to create efficiencies and some more of like the menial tasks to free up that time for that connection is really important. Definitely helpful there. Last question, and then we'll get to the Q&A. This one I like a lot. Oftentimes you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your successes. So can each of you share an example of a program that didn't necessarily meet expectations off the bat, and then what that experience taught you about designing or validating new programs? And Lana, if it's okay, we'll start with you.
Sure. I mentioned it before about the community chapters because, before COVID, it was growing. And, I was just like, oh, I have someone in Israel and France. And, being a team of one is just like, that's a big thing. And so, especially when I had zero budget and like, cause they actually wanted to meet, they wanted to help me and work together. So that was really exciting. But then of course, COVID hit and then, everything had to come to a standstill and you're like, what do you, everybody's scrambling to be like, what are we doing now? And things like that. So one of the things that I learned is I just learned to be flexible and adapt. To sort of see like, okay, so what are the needs? Because, some of them lost their jobs, so in a way I was able to be flexible, just like, how can I support you? I created a job board to help them, connect with other users because, people that use Zuora will come to the Zuora community and, if they need to hire somebody, it makes sense to find it within the community itself. And so some of them moved on to other, avenues and things like that. But really the table talks just were born out of that need or that just immediate shutdown and things like that. So you have to just think of it like, the phoenix that burns but comes out like a new bird and stronger and things like that. So that was what the thing that I learned the most.
I last year we launched a new product that our leadership was very excited about. It was like our big shiny object, and there was a need for customer stories and videos on this new feature. And I was, we essentially, we built this program that was a subset of our ambassador program that was focused on the super users and early adopters for this new feature. Um, I don't think it was a failure necessarily. We did kind of get, people in the program and did get some good customer stories and videos, and a couple of them actually spoke at our conference. However, we built this as a necessity to fulfill that like demand, but it, and I knew this at the beginning too, is we didn't have the proper like engagement or plan for the program. So like we invited people to this thing and then they joined a group and it was just kind of quiet. We didn't really have that many, updates or exciting things for them besides like a special swag gift box and very minimal things, but they weren't talking to each other. It was very like we're it was like pulling teeth to try and get them to engage. And it caused confusion with regards to what our ambassador program was and then what this like micro program within the ambassador program was. And I think for me it was, it's always hard when you have leadership saying like, hey, we want XYZ. And you're like, this isn't what the community is for, or this isn't how we run, but trying to like, fulfill that requirement. So that was kind of, what we did was we are keeping it on a lights on basis. I was very transparent to Lana's point earlier. Trust is the non-negotiable that you need to have with the community and the community with you. And so was very transparent with them in terms of like, hey, like this was what the program was initially for. Thank you for joining. This is what it's going to be looking like from like going forward. We're not going to be doing like big marquee showcasing things with y'all anymore, but we're going to still give you the information. You still have access to our product team. Like this channel will still be here so you can interact and network with one another. But yeah, that was a hot mess of a program for a little bit.
Best intentions are laid. I feel like we hear about things that a lot where internal folks might have a particular idea, but if it's not fully fleshed out or baked out, you'll run into some hiccups along the way.
Yep.
Always, always a lot of learnings from things that don't go according to plan. All right, I think we are at a good time to take some questions from the audience. I see we have one from Bobby in the Q&A. So his question, our vision is to have our product community be a strong voice for product insights and improvements, which require community inputs via low maintenance surveys. The problem, nobody responds. So how do you generate that type of important feedback without throwing gift cards at them to incentivize them? Bobby, an issue I think we're all dealing with.
Yes. So actually, that's where the table talks come in handy because it's real time feedback. And so usually, when the product team is giving some sort of update, a feature or the roadmap or something like that, it's if a customer is watching, it's your first reaction when someone hits you, you go, ow. And so it's just sort of like, oh, that's a pain point. And then they talk, they share their use cases. And even if they don't really understand what they're asking, then in a way the product team can translate that and then they get feedback that it's like something's not sticking, like maybe it's documentation or something like that. So that type of real-time interaction really helps versus like, of course the emails and ideas and surveys help, but that gives people time to think about it, to like, how can I say this better versus the immediate real-time sort of interaction. So that's what helped a lot actually.
And Lana, can you tell us a little bit more about those table talks? Like typically when you're promoting them, do you ask people to fill out a questionnaire or a survey or submit questions in advance, or is it sort of an open forum for people to come with product questions?
I used to ask for questions, but then it was a pain to get them because I had to ask someone to give it to me, and they had to run a report. So that just was too much time. So then, in a way, it's like I mean, that's what the community's there. So if they have questions, they can ask there. So I just defer them to the community to ask questions and things like that. But usually they usually now they come to the event with questions in hand and things like that.
And one more follow-up question from Ashley on this. How do you encourage participation and attendance for the table talks?
So early on, I was just doing it myself, posting in the community, just being like, "Hey, come," And then what I usually do is like sometimes to get the attention of internal teams, you kind of have to do things wrong. And so I was trying to like scream at the top of my lungs to get people to attend, and then marketing said, "Hey, what are you doing? This is weird." And so then they actually like supported me. And from there, I got like a lot more attendees. And of course, I don't have hundreds, like, because I try to keep it a class size, like maybe like 50, because otherwise everyone talks and it's just too much. Of course, that's really exciting because that's feedback for the product managers themselves that they need to have another one. But usually, like before, I was sending out manual, Zoom links. And when we got to 3 or 4, sometimes I was just like, because to err is human. So I was giving out the wrong links to people, and it's just like I have other things to do versus like sending out the right Zoom links. So then they were able to automate it with Marketo. So that helped a lot. And then I was able to they showed me how to create field decks. And so then the field blasts out there, and then other teams started blasting out there. And the other thing that actually really helped is I was asked to be on an AMA with the CEO. And I was like, who, me? And so then I asked him and just said, I'm having all these really good results from the table talks. Do you mind saying just one word to the field team? Because it would really help me. And so, because, one word from the CEO will, top down. One word from the CEO will really help. And that was just like, then all of a sudden people started coming to me. I'm just like, what happened? He's like, did he really do it? And it was really cool. It's like, because there's nothing more exciting than when you get an email from the CEO after you send you send your reports and nobody replies back. But when he replies back, you're like, oh, this is so cool, and it's just like, it's really cool but to have that leadership engagement, it really does help and boost attendance. But even so, even if you're helping 1 to 3 community members, that's a really big accomplishment because you're helping someone at the end of the day. And then they're getting the word out to other people.
That creates a lot of visibility for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another question that came in here from a topic, Tiffany, I think you were talking about. Any tips on collaborating with other departments on different community initiatives?
Any tips on collaborating with other departments for different community initiatives? Yes. I mean, so we have meetings with the different teams during our annual planning process. Number one, to share what kind of like the status of our programs are and how the community is faring and what our goals are for the year. To share just from a visibility, transparency standpoint. And then we get information from them as well in terms of what their priorities are. And then we provide insight into like, oh, well, have you thought about leveraging the community or doing this with the community XYZ because it could actually help you achieve the goals that you're looking for? Because at the end of the day, everyone's busy with their own jobs. Everyone has their own priorities and things that they're working on. And so if you just ask them to do something for the community, they're gonna be like, no, like I'm not doing this. Like I don't have time for it. But if you put it in their shoes, if you see what if they are able to see how the community either helps their job be easier or helps them to attain, and achieve their goals, they're more inclined to help. And then I think to Lana's point, yeah, executive buy-in is also very important to kind of like establish, what the best practices in terms of working with the community. And so, for example, we are presenting in they call it the Cross PM Jam. It's like the one meeting a month where all of the different PM teams come together to align themselves. And community is speaking at the next one to kind of talk about product ideation within the community, the importance of all PMs kind of being in the community, listening into what the members are talking about and engaging there as well, and the benefit that it can provide for them in their individual role, getting insight into like how we can build the product alongside our customers rather than in a bubble. And our CPO is actually kicking off that community section in that meeting to set the scene. And so I think that is a very powerful tactic. And then for us, for collaborating with other departments, we also send out quarterly status updates to each of the department heads based off of what is applicable and relevant for them. So we do like, monthly community reporting on all of the community things. But then like, for example, for the one that we sent to support, we say like, oh, what are the most common topics and things that people are asking in the community? These are the most visited pages in terms of what topics. And so that way the support team could probably work on creating additional help center articles, or maybe they have the links to the forum posts that they can also share with customers as they're reaching out to the support team. And then we also share metrics in terms of like, okay, yeah, these were the number of questions and these are the number of answers asked within the forum with like an estimated case deflection number. That's all like their world. So we're not talking about like the events that we're doing and all of the other like product feedback things, because that's not applicable to them. We're really focused on what they care about. And we do that with across the board with the different teams. And that just provides a lot of, cross team visibility. And then I just do regular check-ins as well with the team leads on a regular basis. So they always know what we're doing. We always know what they're doing. We come and talk to each other at each other's team meetings to share updates and like things like that, just to keep the silos down, keep the gates open. I think that's really important.
So creating a lot of visibility into what's going on at the community level, but then also like super targeted communications. That way you're getting rid of a lot of the noise and you're like speaking at their level to what they care about for each department.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I can chime in too. Sometimes if you don't have the top-down engagement, I do something a little different. I use sociology to my advantage. Like say if somebody's new to the company, they want to be seen, they want to make a splash. And so then I reach out to them and I try to partner with them because they're like, what is it that you want to do? And usually I try to enter the conversation like, I try to be a supportive because, our internal teams are also our customers as well. And so I try to be supportive in a ways like help me get your raise, help me get your promotion, or help me help you get your promotion, or help me get you your raise, from a supportive role, whether it's just like getting the right metrics, because then they'll report it to their superiors and be like, how did you do this? It's like, I did it through the community. It's like, why isn't everyone else doing that? FOMO. Why isn't everyone else doing that? Everyone else should be doing it. So it's like going from the bottom up if you can't go from the top down. So it's just try to think of it like that. And try to find your superstars. Try to find your superstars. Sometimes you can focus on a team, but if the team's not receptive, there's usually that one person that will be receptive. Like, they ask, how's the community going? It's just like, I got you. I've got my target on you,
Like your internal champions almost.
Exactly. It's like, how can we work together? And like, is there a way we can work together? Let me help you and things like that.
Amazing. That's really helpful. Come at it from different angles. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Another question that came through, what strategies have you found the most effective for driving member participation in programs, especially when launching something brand new? We get this a lot, increasing member participation.
I think probably just partnering with your customer success org, because they the teams that talk to the customers every day. Because the thing is, they'll be like, hey, we have a table talk coming up. This is just, the questions that you're asking our product team or so-and-so is going to be there. And it's a great opportunity for you to ask, so because you can't possibly talk to every customer, and everyone just gets so many emails a day, so it's like if, the CS org is meeting one-on-one with certain teams, and that's another end, because you have to have multiple touch points.
I really agree. I think utilizing the account teams and the customer success managers to have those in the conversations that they're doing with the customers already is a good way of expanding kind of awareness of the new program. I also think like before the program launches, there's a lot of opportunity to generate a groundswell of excitement within the community. So, kind of like sneak peeks and previews for your top users. Obviously, maybe like, similarly to when you launch a community, you pre-seed content. I think when you launch a program, you can pre-seed members who are excited about it. So, if you're launching this program as a result of community feedback, for example, like the annual survey that I mentioned at the top of the webinar, doing a personal invite to those particular members who mentioned that this would be helpful for them, then you already have a solid group as you start off the program. And then I think the other thing is utilizing the other, to the point of other teams as well. Like if there are email communications from like your life cycle or your sales team or what have you, just making sure that people know about it. And so I think, we use a tool called Slab internally at Asana that has kind of like our documentation and things like that. Creating a Slack page and sending it out to the different groups so that they are aware of it, so that they can have the proper conversations about it. And then creating that like promo and excitement plan in the community itself before it launches is another good tactic.
Super,
Yeah.
super helpful.
And also, don't forget about support because support will help too. So with the table
Mm-hmm.
talks, it's like if there's a topic related to a certain like product feature, then when a customer closes a ticket, they get an email saying, "Hey, this table talk might be interesting to you." So support is actually one of your good partners to have as well.
Best friend. It takes a village,
It does,
especially
yeah,
within community.
it does.
But these have been really great tips. We've gotten a lot of really good questions today. We are just about out of time, so I wanted to thank everybody who tuned in today. Thank you for all of the chats and the Q&As, for joining us. And Lana, Tiffany, thank you again for sharing your insights and expertise with us here. For everyone tuning in, will be sharing the recording of this webinar via email later this week, so take a look out for that. And for the feedback loop that we talked about earlier, if you have any questions, please hit reply on the email that comes directly to myself and Kat, and we'll get right back to you. And we are going to be dropping a survey link in the chat now. We'd really appreciate any input on today's webinar, any future topics you guys are looking for. Please keep in touch and keep an eye for our upcoming webinars from us here at Hivebrite. So thanks so much for everybody again. Thank you, Lana and Tiffany. We had a great time today.
Sure thing.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.